Hello, welcome back to the VBS2 video tutorials. We are on video 3 now. What we're going to be going over today is a little bit into the 2D map, how to navigate through it, and talking about some of the menus. So, first thing what we're going to do is we're going to click on our networking button here on the left side. And when that brings us to this window here, if there was anybody else maybe trying to run a scenario or creating a scenario, anything like that, you would see their names pop up here in the host list. And if they were trying to run a scenario, you could actually join the scenario as long as they had room for you. But we'll get more into that later on as we start getting into the networking of scenarios. So for right now, we're just going to go ahead and press new. And this is going to bring us to the map menu. In the new here, it looks like, we've got this Baghdad Green Zone, we've got 29 Palms, and we've got a bunch of different maps in here. And all the maps, represent a different area in the world. Some of them are fake, some of them are real, called geospatial, and some of them are geospecific. So whatever you need, you would let your DVTE guys know, and if they have a map available for that area, they'd get it to you. And if they didn't, maybe they could work something out and get you something similar. So let's take a look at this geotypical Afghanistan. I'm just going to click it one time. Not a big deal, but when we look over, you notice that these scenarios are all orange. Okay, so with this orange scenarios, what that's telling you is that is a default scenario within VBS2. It's something that just comes with VBS2. Bohemia Interactive made that scenario, and there's several of those throughout the maps on these. If you go to a map that you have created a scenario on it, notice that it is green, and that's just one of the scenarios that I created. So that tells you the difference between the two sets of scenarios when you're looking at the different maps. So for what we're going to do right now is we're going to go to Porto, and notice there's no scenarios created in Porto, and so we're just going to start off with this new editor, and we're going to hit OK. Now keep in mind, you don't have to hit click on new editor. If there's no scenarios there, it'll default to that spot. So usually these maps take up a couple minutes to load, but I've already loaded this one a few times today, so it pops up pretty quick. Notice I'm able to move this around. This is what we're going to call the 2D map here. So it's just a flat spot, and it shows you roads and buildings and some trees or shrubbery and things like that. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go over some of the motions in the 2D map. If I want to zoom in or out on this map, I would just scroll my mouse wheel. Scrolling it back or towards me zooms me in, and if I scroll up or away from me, it zooms me out. Alright, now let's say I'm zoomed in and I need to get to something on that I can't reach just by moving the mouse. What you would do is right click and hold it and then drag on the map. Okay, and that'll help you move it around and go in all the different directions. And that works at any level. Alright, from there, there's actually not much more at the moment that we need to be doing within this map. You can highlight several units and twist them around and things like that, but we'll get into that here shortly. We're going to first talk about this right here. On this lower left corner, we see a compass. Okay, so this compass will pop up, and on the 2D map, up is always north. No matter what you're doing, you notice that I can't do anything to this map to change the north orientation. But what this will do is kind of maybe help you look left or right for other guys and things like that if you want them to be facing east or facing west. So we're going to double click that, and it brings it in and out. Now we're going to come up to this menu. It's called the Quick Add menu. Alright, and this menu is exactly what it sounds like. It's designed to quick add units. We don't use it very often personally here, but it does get used. So if you play around in here and you figure out some stuff that you're going to be adding on the fly, stuff like that, this would be a good menu for that. If we click on this question mark here, it comes back up into a little bit of a control within this 2D map. So if you look, it says left mouse button, double click, add new object. Left mouse and drag, select multiple units. Map. On the mouse wheel, we can zoom in and out. Right mouse button will drag and move the map. Keyboard shortcuts, M would switch between 2D and 3D view. M for map. and H could be a preview. So that's kind of all that there really is in this menu. You've got different layers and things like that you can play with, but most of this stuff we don't use for our standard scenarios. So we're going to press this double arrow. We're going to collapse this in. Okay, so now moving on along the top up here, we have a file menu. So underneath the file menu, you have load, save, and clear. So this would help you load a mission. This takes a second here and there, but you can actually load your missions that you have previously built on other maps. So you could, from the Porto map, load a map and a mission that you had created elsewhere. Notice terrain and mission. So if you do a save, that'll save your current scenario, and we'll get more into saving later on. There's a couple specific parameters that have to be met in order to be able to save a scenario, so we're going to talk about that too. Clear would just clear your entire map. Edit the briefing. This is going to give you an area to maybe write up a 5-paragraph order or something along those lines. So notice it says visible to side. We can make it to where only Blue 4 can see it, only Op4 civilian or independent. For the most part, everybody who's involved in the scenario is going to know what's going on, so it doesn't necessarily have to be changed, but if you did need to change it for whatever reason, you could. So in here you would type your text, you have notes, and then you have objectives, and you can add and remove objectives as you see fit. You can have a restart that would actually, this isn't so much for the OME or the original mission editors you see here. That just means that we are not in any type of play mode, we're just in a development mode. You could restart it from the real-time editor, and that would just restart the scenario. And then you could preview from here. And again, like save, there's a couple parameters that have to be met, but we will go into those later. Options here is the same options you had before. Pops up your video options, audio controls, and difficulty. So we don't need that. We're going to close it. And then you come over here to view. So remember we said M was a shortcut for your 2D and your 3D map view. So either one of those, you could go off of view and do it, or you could do it by pressing M. And there's another option for that too. It's fairly repetitive, but it gets the job done. You have editor settings, show texture, and hide 3D icons. If we click on show texture here, notice it changes the background of our map a little bit. Kind of shows what some of this land might look like. As you get in on the beaches, you can see that. Things like that. It brings the roads out, pops them a little bit. Now the colors may not be specific to what's going on, but on the 2D map it works and it's obvious to you. So you can come back in, you can hit hide texture, and it takes you back to that white background. Tools, we have scenario settings, developer console, measuring the distance, export EMF, export LBT, create form, and list forms. Quite a few of these we actually do not use because there's not much need for what we do for this. The export EMF, LBT, the create form, and list forms we don't use. Measuring distance, this tool will work here. It also works down in another menu that we'll get to shortly. We've got the developer console that if you know the scripting side of things, you're able to add things on the fly through scripts, and you can execute them in here. And we have the scenario settings. Alright, so we'll go through this one thoroughly here. The object properties, you can drag this. Notice that I can grab it, drag it, move it around, do whatever I need to do. So we have overcast and wanted overcast, fog and wanted fog, rain, snow, wind speed, wind blowing from, and then initialization statements. So overcast, the more we take this up, the more overcast it is. And if we leave the wanted overcast at the very left and we take the overcast as high as it'll go, we end up in a spot where it'll start out very overcast and over time it will drop the overcast. Or you could do that vice versa and put your wanted overcast as high as it'll go and put your overcast as low as it'll go, and that'll make it more overcast. Fog is the same way with fog and wanted fog. If you want rain and snow, you can add those. The wind speed, you can add that, and that'll just make it windy. It doesn't really affect too much except for smoke. And then you can change the direction that it's blowing from. Initialization statements, again, that gets into the scripting. If you know it, you can use that. If not, there's not really a whole lot you need to do. Setting the date and time, we can click on set time. and you can and it brings you to this 3D view. So now you notice we can see everything, and as I move this slider, the time changes. We've got night, and then you can bring it all the way up to day, and then get back into night again. So this is just so you can see what time it is as the scenario starts, and time will continue to run, which will obviously, if you start at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and it runs for 3 hours, it's probably going to be dark by the time you're done. So we hit OK, we're done with that, and we press M, brings us back to our 2D map. Remember M, and you notice we've got this little cloud looking explosion thing in here called Intel. If we double click that, it brings us right back to where we were before. See all that? Okay, so another way to change the time would just be to hit the menu here and start at 0, and you go all the way up to 23. And then you have minutes. You can do the time of year, month, and day. So in May, the sun's going to come up a little bit earlier than it would in January. So you can use that kind of stuff. And then you have AI, allies, and behavior. So you have independents are allied to Blue4, which means that if there are independents out there working as an independent group, like possibly like the CIA or something along those lines, which is kind of unrealistic, but they would be friendly to the Blue4. The civilians don't like, they have Op4 for that one as a default. You can change that though to where the civilians don't like Blue4, and they get mad as the Blue4 comes into town and things like that. And might shoot civilians as nobody, and you can change that. And that's just kind of an AI control. So that's it. Not quite it for this menu. We also have units shown on the map. For the Blue4 side, you have units line of sight, and Op4 side line of sight. So if your guys are looking at their map during a scenario, if someone is in the line of sight of a Blue4, it will show up on the map. And that goes the same thing for the Op4 side. So. And that's all we've got for this particular one here. So we're just going to hit OK. And notice, like I said before, we've got that little Intel marker in there. It doesn't matter where this goes on the map. It can be completely off the map. It can be on the map. It's not going to interrupt any type of simulation, and it's not going to affect anything that comes into the map. So that is all the time we have for this video. On the next video, we'll get into the other two menus on the right side over here, and we will start creating our scenario. Thank you, and have a good day.